Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Jack Beasley. I'm a sports photographer and videographer in the Phoenix metro area. Today, I'm talking about the Nikon Z6 Mark III. And the question we're asking today is it good enough for professional level sports? Let's get into it. So before we get started, I'm going to give you a little history of my experience with the Nikon Z cameras. Initially, I didn't switch to mirrorless because I did not hear good things about the Nikon Z6, Z5, all the original models. Then the Z6 II came out. So I thought, okay, I'll give that a try. And I'm comparing it to my, say, D5 that I had at the time. I found that the Z6 Mark II did a terrible job, in my opinion, with autofocus. You might as well have just left it on the old style group patterns that I use with my DSLRs, because the 3D tracking, the face tracking, head tracking was not good. It was unacceptable in my opinion. So I sold that Z6 II. All right, fast forward. Now I'm into mirrorless cameras. The Z9 came out. That broke the mold for me. I decided to get into Nikon mirrorless, have Z8. Then the 3 came out, and it's been out for a while now. And I decided to end up getting one of these because I'm more and more into video. And I've heard very good things about this camera with video. Now, the question I had was, can I still use this for still photography? Okay, I've tried it out on the video side, does great. Can I use this for sports photography? Is it good enough to handle the type of photography that I do with the more expensive Z8 and Z9? So that's what I did. I went out and tested it. And the conclusions I came to are, I am very impressed with this camera. All right, the first thing I want to check is autofocus. And what I did was recently I was at two different high school championship baseball games, one during the day and then one followed at night. This one, of course, is during the day. And in this case, it's a batter who has just hit the ball and he is sprinting as fast as he can to get to first base. And all of these are one frame after another. I didn't skip any. So if you zoom in real close, this is at 236%. Nice and sharp on the head and face. And next image, nice and sharp, head and face, nice and sharp, head and face, on and on and on. One more, head and face, nice and sharp. So very good during the day. I had absolutely no problem as long as I did my part and I had, the camera got a chance to actually acquire the target and get the lens zoomed in or focused where it was supposed to be. And then I let it track, it did just fine. And this is basically what I have to do with the Z8 and the Z9, no difference at all. Okay, same thing, same kind of situation, except now we're at night. We zoom in, player is head and face is very sharp. And as we go through, same thing, nice and sharp, not a problem. All the way through every single image, head and face, nice and sharp. Once again, I let the camera have a chance to get the lens focused and tracking the subject, and it did very good. Now, let's talk about some other images. Now, let's do where there's lateral movements to the camera. In this case, I'm focused on the face of this ball player, second baseman. He's going to try to catch the ball and tag out the runner. He's not successful, but doesn't really matter in our case right here. But what's going to happen is the camera's going to track him as he moves down through the plane of the image here. And in each frame, his face remains perfectly sharp. So I'm not really seeing an issue with the Z6 Mark III when it comes to autofocus. It is the equal to of the Z8 and the Z9. All right, so let's talk about how the Z6 Mark III actually performs when it comes to high ISO situations. Same baseball game at night. This is the RAW file, and it's been run through DxO Pure RAW 3. Here is the JPEG version. Is not as sharp. That's probably a factor associated with the fact that the DxO was making some optical corrections, but it's still acceptable. I didn't do any noise reduction on this at all. In fact, if I scroll down, you'll see I have no noise reduction going on at all. So obviously the camera did a very good job cleaning up the noise in camera noise reduction. So no complaints there. I will say it's not as sharp as DxO, but the DxO does a great job with that kind of thing. So in-camera noise reduction does a very good job. Here's another image. Again, this one's been shot raw with some help from DxO Pure Raw 5. It's ISO 10,000 and looks great. If we go to the JPEG version with in-camera noise reduction, not quite as smooth as the Pure Raw 5 version, but still looks very good, very acceptable. Again, this is at ISO 10,000, so I think it looks just fine. I can't really complain. Again, not as sharp as the RAW with DxO Pure Raw 5, but that could probably be adjusted in the sharpening within the camera. Okay, so we know it autofocuses well. We know it handles high ISO situations well, has good in-camera noise reduction. So what else can we talk about? Well, let's talk about flicker reduction. Flicker reduction was not an issue. Again, I was shooting mechanical throughout the series. One drawback of the Z6iii is you only get flicker reduction if you're using the mechanical shutter. It does not work in the electronic shutter. So that is a drawback compared to, say, the Z8, Z9, which will do flicker reduction all the time. It doesn't really matter. As far as frame rate, the Z6iii, the best it can do is 14 frames per second in mechanical, 20 frames, and this is raw, and 20 frames per second in electronic shutter. Again, Z8, Z9 can do 20 frames per second in raw, much higher than that, 120 frames per second in JPEG. Is that a big problem? No. I mean, I was shooting baseball. I was still getting the ball in the frame on a regular basis. I was still able to capture action. So, and when I think back just a few years ago when I had 9 frames per second on my D850, 14 frames, I can handle it. Part of the reason I also use the mechanical shutter with this baseball game is because I wanted to get the bats nice and sharp. And the problem with rolling shutter is you might have some warping effect that I didn't want to see. So that's why I had the electronic shutter turned off. Another fact you might consider if you're a pro is the weather sealing. It is my understanding that the Z6iii has the same weather sealing as the Z8. What does that mean in practical terms? Basically, you could probably get rained on. And again, don't quote me on this, but you could probably get rained on and not worry about it too much, but I certainly wouldn't want to soak it. Now, another factor for me as a professional photographer is what is the battery life like? So I knew the one little battery that goes into the camera doesn't last forever. So what happened is I went out and bought me this little device here, and it is an MB N14 accessory that attaches to the bottom of the camera. And basically, instead of one battery inside of it, you have 2. And it'll operate off of one, but you can put 2 in here and it'll use both of them. And it'll use one right after the other. So in addition to holding 2 batteries instead of just the one, you get the vertical grip, plus you get some functionality that you would have if you had a built-in grip. And I'm glad I did have this set up is because I didn't have to change batteries. I shot over 6,000 images, 6,300 some odd images through this Z6iii with this accessory grip. And in the end, I still had about 35% battery on the second battery. So it went through the first one, automatically kicked over to the second battery, continued on through the end of the game. Now, the way to save batteries is I turned off all the networking and Wi-Fi features, had it on airplane mode, and I turn off the camera in between shots. So if I'm not actively taking photos of something, I turn off the camera, and that saves a lot of batteries there. But I do that on my other cameras too, the Z8 and the Z9. So when you compare the Z8 to the Z6 Mark III, some other factors are concerned are the Z6iii is smaller, weighs about 24 ounces. The Z8 is 32 ounces. The Z8 has 46 megapixels. The Z6 Mark III has 24 effective megapixels. What does that mean? Z8 is high resolution. This is like standard resolution, if you want to call it that. There's pros and cons to that. If you go back to like the D5, D6, they were around 24 megapixels. And some would argue that's better for JPEG shooting under high ISO, and that's probably true because with the Z8 and the Z9, I really need a lot of help from like the DxO Pure Raw 5 to clean up those images. the in-camera noise reduction with the JPEGs, smaller resolution, works better in that regard. So if you really love shooting JPEG, this is actually a pretty good option for you. Another good option is the Z8 is $3,500 right now as I make this video, and the Z6 Mark III is $2,100. So a significant price difference between the two of them. So I think I can honestly say, based on my relatively limited experience, just a few events over the last few weeks, that the Z6 Mark III is a very solid sports camera. And I would, if somebody were to ask me, should I buy this for sports? I would say yes. I would wholeheartedly endorse it, both for photo and video. It's not a horribly expensive camera in the grand scheme of things when you look at cameras. You can get them used. In fact, I bought this one used. So go out and find yourself, if you're trying to get into it and you have the means, the ability to do so, I would say pick up a Z6 Mark III. If you can afford it, pick up the additional battery pack and grip. And I think you would have a very solid combination to get into Nikon Z mirrorless cameras for sports. And with that, I thank you for being here. I hope I answered some questions. I certainly enjoyed using the camera over the last month or so on those several different events, and it's a very solid piece of equipment. Although I probably won't be using it as my primary camera, it'll certainly be a backup. And as I move into expanding my photo business, I plan to have some second shooters, and they will probably be using this camera right here. And with that, please do not forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you have any questions, comments, concerns, hit me up in the comments below. With that, I thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video.